Welcome to our program on Kardec Radio.
Hello, dear friends. Here we are at Kardec Radio and the Spirit Society of Virginia in our Fridays. Yes, Fridays Inspirational Talks. We can almost recall when we were at the center, right? Gathering together in person. It's been 2 years. Oh, Mamma Mia, 2 years. We miss the Fridays with you in person. But we're closer together than we imagine because we're connected. We're in the same Wi-Fi, literally. And today we're going to talk about that. Thoughts, thinking, and the power of thoughts. The power of thoughts that will be maximized in our discipline of thinking. And if we discipline our thinking, we may transform ourselves. We have much to share with you in that regard, but to prepare us for this moment as we see wonderful friends joining us, we would like to begin with a message by Emmanuel that Carol Correa is going to help us with. Right, Carol?
Right, dear Vanessa. Hello, dear friends. The message we are going to read tonight is entitled, To What End? And it is message 28 of the book Our Daily Bread. But not all things edify. Paul to the Corinthians 10:23. There have always been indefinable individuals who, although they have not done harm to anyone, they have not done any good either. Examined from the same angle, things along the way must be rightly interpreted in order not to be lost in uselessness. It is perfectly all right for people to dedicate themselves to literature or to the honest business practices of the world, and no one will contest the laudable character of those who conscientiously choose their individual line of useful work. Nevertheless, it is also right to know the intentions of the writer and the purposes of the business person. What good will it do for the former to produce lengthy works full of verbal fences and theoretical rapture if his or her words are devoid of constructive thought for the eternal plan of the soul? In what way will the business person profit from his or her immense fortune achieved through hard work and calculation if it remains stagnant in the bank, waiting for the folly of heirs? In either case, one cannot say that either of these individuals had illicit activities in mind. Nonetheless, they wasted precious time forgetting that the smallest things hold a constructive purpose. Workers who are conscious of their responsibilities do not wander off the righteous path. There is much affliction and anguish in the workshops of earthly improvement, because the people who work in them are primarily concerned with material gain, overlooking the end for which they are destined. Meanwhile, projects and experiments increase, but the lack of just and necessary spiritual constructiveness continues.
Thank you, Carol, for inspiring us with this message by Emmanuel. It has everything to do with the theme tonight. But to begin it in a way that we can find permeability in us, let us pray, friends. visualizing ourselves. For those who know the Spiritist Society of Virginia, let us visualize ourselves there. Anyhow, let us visualize in Kardec Radio's room, therapeutic room, where we are going to connect, form this current of prayer, and receive its therapy. Dear Mother, Father God, we want to hear you, your wisdom, and the quietness of this moment. Breathing in and out, we feel your sustenance, your providence, and we rejoice in gratitude for your kindness in providing to us what we need. We thank you for sending the messengers of your love, teachers of the beyond, therapists, doctors, and nurses, who take this opportunity to treat us, to illuminate us, preparing us for important achievements in our immortality. And we pray especially to those who may be in greater need than us, including those who send their names for the book of prayers at the SSVA and Cardiac Radio, as well as everyone who is connected to us live or on demand. Feeling the flow of healing, rejuvenate ourselves in the serenity of this moment, certain that any challenge we may be experiencing is a blessing in disguise, preventing us from escalating into decisions that no longer pertain to our evolution, or awakening us for new beginnings. Feeling your guidance and your protection, we are honored to be granted the permission to begin this therapeutic session tonight, and so be it. Hello, dear friends who are joining us here, and we want to begin by sharing with you this slides. Yeah, we have a few slides, and we are teaming up here to be able to go through this important topic. Leon Denis, in the book The Problem of Life and Destiny, you can find it easily at Amazon, and I have actually the Kindle version, so convenient. This chapter, the discipline of thinking and inner transformation, is an invitation to a new life. It reminds us so much of so many authors since Forerunner times. It reminded us of the works by Prentice Mulford. He was born in Long Island and then lived in California at the gold rush era, and later became a very prolific writer. He wrote a book named Thoughts Are Things, and this book is simply phenomenal. It goes hand in hand with the Spiritist books. He wrote at a time in which nobody talked about currents of thoughts. He talked about it way before Andre Luiz wrote his book in the 20th century through Chico Xavier. From Prentice Mulford's to so many others, more currently, even beyond Spiritism. We have Wayne Dyer, who has this phenomenal book, DVD, and a whole series of lectures on thoughts that change your thoughts, change your life. And the movie The Shift. If you go to YouTube, just type in Wayne Dyer, The Shift, and it's all about that. It's really great because it goes hand in hand with the Spiritist teachings, showing to us the universality of the teachings. And Leon Denis, way before all the others currently speaking, he wrote about thought saying it's the most important thing in our lives, the mind. Later, Daisy is going to lead us into two other books that are already available in Spiritism that complement everything, showing to us how the Spiritist science is so well aligned amongst its most important authors, from André Luiz in Mechanisms of Mediumship to also and Emmanuel through Chico Xavier in Thought and Life. The beginning for all of us is this. As André Luiz says through Chico Xavier, our thought is immersed in the thought of the Creator. When we talk about thoughts, we're talking about feelings and thoughts, as we say per se. That set is within the Creator's thought. What does that mean to us? It changes everything. That's how we become co-creators. We don't invent anything. We unveil what exists. And we are within the limits of the unlimited, because the Creator's thought is not even what I drew here, because that's very limited. The thought's creator is something that we cannot put limits, boundaries, but we are immersed in it all as co-creators. And now we can feel why it's important to think right, to feel rightly. If otherwise, we're out of God's laws. It must be in synchronicity. And that's why the first thing for us to realize is that thought is matter. It's tangible. André Luiz talks about the fact that our thoughts are so tangible that it's composed of corpuscles. And he compares to the atoms and the particles, the positive and the negative particles of atoms. Of course, we know the nuclei much more than we can imagine. Even this week in science, we got great news in regards to nuclear fusion. Talks about the power of those small, tiny molecules within the atoms, the nuclei of atoms, and how it's bringing new light to us on earth. Now imagine, it seems so small and tiny and invisible, and yet so powerful, tangible. But even the nuclear fusion is byproduct of our thinking. To understand a little more the direction that we're going to call Daisy now to bring us more elements before we go back to Life and Destiny by Leon Denis, to understand how, very practically, we can discipline our thoughts to lead us into a different life, a better life, a healthier life. So we're going to ask our friend Daisy to join us. Right, Daisy?
Yes. Hi, Vanessa, and good evening, friends. So, as we continue in this study talking about the power of our thoughts, we will bring some highlights from the two books that Vanessa mentioned, Mechanism of Mediumship by André Luiz through Chico Xavier and Thought and Life by Emmanuel through Chico Xavier. And these books, they really complement Leon Denis' beautiful chapter as he tells us how to discipline our thinking. And we get to know through these books that thought is a subtle and inexhaustible force of the spirit. André Luiz describes to us that thought is a living and exteriorizing current. So, as Vanessa was mentioning to us, it is something that we can measure. Thought is matter. It is living matter. It's exteriorized out of ourselves as we see in this picture. It manifests itself out with unmanageable self excitation and self plasticization faculties. What does that mean? That means that our thoughts, they can be molded, they can be excited, as Vanessa was talking to us about the atoms, the charges. So, yes, something that is so powerful that if people knew and applied this, as Emmanuel said, change your thoughts and you truly will change your whole life. But they don't stop there. They continue explaining to us, saying that thought is an electromagnetic force. Electromagnetic, like electricity, it has a charge, it travels, but is also magnetic. It attracts. Wow, that is a question for us. What are our thoughts attracting in our lives? And we'll give examples of the types of thoughts that we have and what are we attracting to our lives. Because a lot of people say, well, my life doesn't change. Well, are we truly changing our thought patterns? Because if we truly want our lives to change, we need to go to the root of the problem, know ourselves, and analyze ourselves. Why am I having these types of thoughts? They continue explaining to us that our thoughts are like mental waves and that they have positive and negative charges. Yes, like the atoms, positive and negative charge. They create gravity and affinity by assimilation and dissimulation. So, friends, let us think that thought is something tangible. We saying that, oh, I'm just thinking. Let us cross that sentence out of our vocabulary. Well, if you're thinking good things, great. But what are those thoughts that we have? Sometimes a fixed thought, if it's negative, why will be attracting for ourselves? Why is this important? Well, André Luiz and Emmanuel explain something that is very important. As we see in this picture, they say that each one of us, we have what they call a vital halo, some people call an aura, and this remains ourselves, our vital halo, our aura. It's woven by the subtle atomic currents of our thoughts that are proper or habitual to ourselves. So that means that we live and breathe literally within our thoughts because our thoughts, as in this picture, propagate out and form this aura around ourselves. And it's so tangible that they explain that it has a certain frequency, a certain color. An exercise that the mentors always share with us and ask us to share to our children, and we're going to remind everyone tonight, is to truly draw ourselves as a spirit, as a flame, and for us to think about when we picture ourselves, what is the color, what is the texture that we see ourselves immersed in? So let us do this exercise so that we can visualize that we are immersed within our own thoughts and feelings. They say that we live and breathe immersed in this atmosphere of the images we project and we receive. Why? Why do they say the images that we project and then we receive? It's because of the electromagnetic force. We put our thought out like an electromagnetic force, and we're gonna attract similar thoughts that will attune with us. So that means that we influence one another. We are immersed into each other auras. So how are we sometimes communicating? Mostly without words, friends. It is vibrational. But the most important thing for us to remember, as we have seen in many books, and is again brought by these two books tonight, is that there is no neutral position. We cannot say, oh, but I'm just thinking. No, there is either constructive or destructive mental currents. There is no neutral positions as in our car. We can go forward, backwards, or neutral. No, with our thoughts, there is no neutral, friends. We are even connected to constructive or destructive mental currents. If we ennoble our conscience, if we study ourselves, if we nourish ourselves with good knowledge, good books, talking to each other, good things, the richer will the imagination and the mental power be emerging from the soul. We will be connecting with constructive currents. However, if we decide ourselves, we talk about free will. Yes, we have the power to choose. If we use our will to externalize maladaptive and destructive mental waves, it will attract forces of equivalent content, often falling into obsessive blindness. Friends, Andrea Louise doesn't sugarcoat for us. It tells us directly that we will fall into obsession that is so blindly that the truth will be in front of us and we will not be able to see because we are choosing to connect with these destructive mental currents. We're woven ourselves using our will to be connected to these destructive waves that will truly destruct our lives. So we might be asking, but what are those destructive mental waves? It cannot be that bad, right, Daisy? I am trying. Well, Andrea Luiz and Emmanuel, wonderful educators, they are very practical and they bring to us many examples. Thinking or constantly talking about sick situations. Well, nowadays with the pandemic is such a perfect example because that is the very first topic of all conversations. Well, it's okay, it's happening, we need to look at the news. But if we're constantly in that negative thinking, asking ourselves, is God punishing us? Why is this pandemic not going away? And just focus on the negative, we will be connecting with destructive mental currents. He says, if we indulge in debauchery, that is extreme indulgence in bodily pleasures, from alcohol to sex to drugs, anything that is immoral. This in our society is so present that we turn on the TV and it's hard to find a series or a TV show. It's portraying what is happening in our society. So, what type of spirits do we think will be attracting as we indulge in the pleasures, the passing pleasures? We'll be connecting with destructive mental currents. If we are cruel, if we practice slander, criticism, anger, those are all things that will ourselves connect with us with destructive mental currents. But friends, remember, it starts within ourselves. It starts, yes, if we give room, we know we're learning, we're still gonna react. Yes, sometimes I get so angry with a loved one, with our children, but we stop and we use our will and think, well, I can give room to these thoughts, or we can quickly substitute it with what? Constructive mental currents. What are those? Those are when we're thinking of greater and good things. When we are thinking ourselves about immortality. Well, remember, if we are there, as in that example, talking about the pandemic and it's so hard, we know we don't want to put that to the side because so many people are sick. But then we stop and say, let us trust in God. If God is allowing us to go through this experience, there must be a reason. Let us focus in our immortality. What are we learning as an individual, as a family, as a society? Let us focus on the immortal things of life. Let us focus on the positive. If we're going through this, that is a reason. Has Jeziel or Stephen, the book of Paul and Stephen, always going through the hardest things that he could go through in his life, and he would always have a positive attitude, thinking and saying to his sister and his dad, if we're going through this, there must be a reason. Let us trust God because God knows the reason why. And every time we are helping others, we're connecting with constructive mental currents. And if we're being selfless, patient, and indulgent. Those are the things, friends, that is the key for us to make sure that we ourselves are protecting ourselves. We are connecting with the constructive Wi-Fi, which is the only Wi-Fi we should be worried in connecting with. When we are selfless to others, when we give without expecting anything in return, where we are patient with each other, with your indulgence towards others. But it's also important for us to know that as we think, we make associations. Yes, remember, electromagnetic, we emit, but we also attract. And we make associations with one another. Andrea Luiz and Emmanuel says that the soul enters into resonance with the mental currents of its souls who are in tune with it. So, again, we ask ourselves, why am I attracting this to my life? What are my thoughts? Why am I entering in this mental current? Why are we assimilating the thoughts of those who think as we do? So, if we want to change the associations, we can make the choice of changing our thoughts. And they say, when we feel, we visualize, we speak, or we act, we are in tune with the emotion and ideas of those who are both incarnate and discarnate in the same wavelength. Friends, we know that we are spirits. We are surrounded by discarnate spirits. So it depends on us, on the connections that we will make. We are not victims because what we feel, what we visualize, what we speak, what we do, what we say, they will have a consequence. So tonight for us, the most important thing is that we remember that thought is life, thought is matter, it's tangible, it is electromagnetic, and there's only two Wi-Fis, the constructive and the destructive. So next time we exercise every day, every single minute, what are we thinking and what are the types of association that we're making? So we'll now pass it back to Vanessa so we can continue learning more with Leon Denis.
Thank you, Daisy. And now we go back to Leon Denis because it goes hand in hand and it advances now to a very important moment, the discipline of our thoughts. So Leon Denis now, in the book, The Problem of Life and Destiny, invites us to understand. He re-emphasizes twice in two different chapters, thought is creative. And he means by saying that it creates what Kardec said in the book Genesis, these thought forms that will act onto what it is, the target, and also onto ourselves specially. So when we are there thinking and say, I'm just thinking, no, we're creating. It's scary, we know, because we're so non-educated. We would say, if we are illiterate regarding emotional management in regards to thinking management, we're even worse. We're not even there. We don't even know that there is an alphabet that we need to learn to use and to conjugate our lives. But we here, as spiritists, this is the foundation of life, the mind. Learning to think is essential to change the direction if our life is not in the right direction. Learning to think, as he says to us, thoughts create words, and words will also give more to actions, and it will create either a grand life, as he says, or a miserable one. So if we're living the miserable one, we created it. When we look at this pandemic, it's clear we created it. Of course we did. God didn't create the pandemic. We did, with our very thoughts, feelings, words, and actions. But we can change it. And that's the beauty of life. God is so good that the minute we realize we're off, we are ready on the other Wi-Fi, as Daisy explained to us based on the book Mechanisms of Mediumship. If we realize we're in the destructive mental current, we say, I no longer want to be here. I already connect with the other Wi-Fi, and vice versa. There is no like, I'm just thinking. You're either in one or another. And he says to us, Leon Denis, in the book, The Problem of Life and Destiny, he's going to say that we create vibrations. He says that the vibrations of our thoughts and words will expel, this is the dynamics, will expel from our perispirit the elements that are not in harmony with whom we are. And they will attract similar elements that accentuate our tendencies. So it's so interesting because when we say, how come I ended up getting married to this person? Or how come I ended up meeting this friend? Or how come? Well, you see, we don't know who we are, because once we know who we are, we'll get the answer. There is a cause that began with us. As Daisy repeated, we're not victims. Today, we're given the key to a new life. It's as if we're given the key to a new home, saying, here is your home, your mind. What you think is what you're going to be. What we thought this far created what we are. What we think now is going to create our future. Right now, we're sowing seeds, thought by thought. Think of seeds, thoughts. The more we think of them, the bigger the crop, the greater the harvest. If we think in the right direction, beautiful plantation, or not. And that's why Leon Denis is going to lead us into the power of prayer when he says in these beautiful words, prayer, which is the communion through thought with the spiritual and divine universe, is the effort of the soul toward eternal beauty and truth. That's why we feel so good when we pray. Our morning prayers at Cardiac Radio, our daily prayers at 6 p.m. And here we are. It's tangible. But it's not only Leon Denis who says that. Even science shows to us that prayer does things in our physical body. Who said that? A scientist who used to be at Penn State University and then now at Thomas Jefferson, Andrew Newberg. He was the first one many years ago, and it became the cover of Time magazine, showing the impact of prayer in our brain. So when we pray, we're massaging the brain. In what direction? In the direction of beauty and truth. And when we grab a hold of the truth, we change our lives. Often we suffer because we're far from the truth. And what is the truth? We need to study ourselves and study life to really know the truth. And once we know, we can change how we proceed. But he says when we have bad thoughts like jealousy, bad desires, passions, hatred, we create living images imprinted on the perispirit, entangling it. Today I was talking to somebody who said to me, oh, Vanessa, that person came from, and forgive me for saying this, in the United States, you know what I mean. This person said, that person came from a redneck family. And I was like, I can't believe you're a spiritist and you're saying those words. but I said, no, but this is prejudice. What do you mean? When we're labeling people that way, this cannot be good. How are we going to attract good spirits when we are being so prejudiced? When we feel so superior to people that we label them looking down on them and we don't even know them. That can't be good. You see how we do this every day without noticing, and we justify ourselves. We think it's just a thought. Well, but it takes those thoughts, they lead us into imprinting those living images in our very spirit, entangling it. That's why most often we don't feel good. We look at people. Science shows to us how difficult it is to deal with social media. We're learning how to deal with social media, but not quite. I often, through my professional work, advise based on science people to avoid disclosing every personal detail of their lives in social media. Why? If they knew human nature on earth, they wouldn't share that much. Why? Because Emmanuel says in the preface of the book 2,000 years ago, he says, what I'm telling you in this book happens to date. And he numbers what they are: jealousy, bad desires, passions, and hatred, just like Leon Denis. So we need to learn how to manage our thoughts and understand that people are just like us. And if we want to attract good spirits, we need good associations. We need also to select our thoughts more appropriately. So to be on our thinking process, to be so observant of our thoughts that we will secure better health for us, not only today, but for immortality. But Leon Denis, interestingly, as he develops his discourse in this chapter, he's going to stop for a moment talking about our contradictions, as he says, or what Mentor Joseph always reminds us, our incoherences. He says, if our actions are good, but our thoughts are bad, there can be a false appearance of good, and we will continue to harbor evil within ourselves, the influences of which will sooner or later impact in our lives. So there are people who say, but people, I'm not saying anything. Well, but you're thinking, you're impacting the whole vibration. Kardec talks about the fluidic impact, the energetic impact, the vibratory impact of our thoughts in a group of people. So learning to think correctly in harmony with the laws of God will secure that not only we emanate spiritual pollution that will affect people, but also that will not entangle our very energies affecting us. But when we talk about this coherence, it talks about accepting the law of love. Some people will say, but I don't do any harm to anyone. Well, it depends. If you look at yourself in the mirror every day and you think you're not good enough, you don't deserve any good, that you know that you are not a good person as you should be, you are creating a problem for everybody else, because we're not loving ourselves, not loving God either. Because when we think bad thoughts about our own selves, we're not being sincere, we're not loving God. I may recognize that I am still falling short, but I'm growing. I'm learning, and I want to overcome it because I love God and I know God allows me to stay at this level for now, knowing that tomorrow I'll be more evolved. So the first tip to discipline our thought, so surprising. Leon Denis says, choose our company. And this doesn't mean company. It's the old-fashioned way of company, being people in our lives, right? Yes, choosing our company. Choosing our company. Why? He says, it is good to live in contact with great writers of genius, with the truly great authors of all times and countries, by reading, meditating on their works, impregnating our beings with the substance of their souls. The radiations of their thoughts will awaken similar effects in us, and in the long run will bring about changes in our character, an inner transformation by the very nature of the impressions they left. So you and I, who are here constantly at Cardiac Radio, immersed in all of these programs by so many hosts, constantly bringing all these geniuses of the beyond, authors of all times, are choosing good company. And by reading, meditating, listening to this, we are absorbing this new frequency. So we need to choose our company. It's important to tell our children, yes, you're going to be friendly with everyone, kindly with everyone, but choose your friends. Because you want to be friends with people that want to grow and progress, who have a growth mindset. You don't want to be constantly in the company of those who practice laziness, selfishness, materialism, etc., etc., etc. We may be kind and friendly, but choose our company. Leon Denis continues by giving another tip. Choose what we read. The other week, somebody from Brazil, who's a family member, told me about a book. So many spiritist books are being written daily in Brazil. Not only Brazil, but mostly. And contacted me, what do you think about this book? Send me pages. I read and I said, it talks about bad things on earth and the evil spirits. And I said, I don't read these authors yet. And I'm not so sure if I will, because right now we're so focused on the important books in Spiritism that address all these things. And according to Kardec, I don't think these predictions will help anybody. I think we need to stick with the good authors. So choosing what to read, in general, we read too much and we read hastily and we hardly meditate. It would be better to read less and think more about what we read. And that's a good technique. Take good books, one sentence, and meditate all day long and find an exercise for the soul, feeling the scripture. Leon Denis wrote this before social media. And that's so true, because now it's even worse. We read more in social media and quickly, and we hardly meditate on it. And then we don't know if what we read is true or false. Why? Why don't we know? Because we don't think anymore. Then he continues, there is a way for us to study too. Studying in silence and retreat is always fruitful for the development of thought. Today, when I was walking a dog, I was listening to a podcast, and then it finished. And I started listening to nature. It was a different feeling. That silence from human voices. And that connection with nature also helps us meditate. It is in silence that powerful works come to fruition. There are great invisible beings around thinkers, all eager to inspire the latter. My friends, think of the wonderful minds of the beyond, your protecting spirits, our guardian angels, and many more. They want to teach us. Do you want them as your teachers? So stop, listen, get a good book, sit down. Even if it's in the middle of the night, meditate. Allow them to inspire. It's a wonderful journey. And he says, we also need to learn to speak in order to discipline the mind. So he says, avoid noisy discussions, empty words, frivolous readings. And isn't that what we do nowadays? We can't sit next to anybody without blah, 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 blah. So it's so good when we're around somebody who knows how to be quiet. And avoid empty words. Teaching our children, like, speak, meaning what you speak. Don't blah, blah, blah just because. Quiet down. If you don't know what to say, if it's not good, don't say it. We live in times of intellectual inertia, which is caused by the scarcity of serious analysis. This was written in the beginning of the 20th century, and a century later, it's still so true. There is this intellectual inertia. If I post right now a TikTok post, right? TikTok post, saying nonsense, it's probably going to go viral. But if I place a TikTok post there saying, let us learn to speak, it's going to be booed. Nobody cares. 3 likes, if any. Because there's this intellectual inertia. We love this expression by Leon Denis because it shows to us that we're stagnated. We don't want to progress. So he says, let us attach ourselves to more substantial works, to everything that can enlighten us about the deep laws of life and facilitate our evolution. We're not going to evolve if we keep reading news that do not add anything. It's junk. It's like eating potato chips all the time. You're going to destroy your health. Eating Oreos every day, you're going to destroy your health. Yes, it's not going to help. So he says, if we don't want to progress, we're going to experience the shock of trials. He says, it takes the shock brought by our trials, by pain, plus sad and desolate hours for us to understand the brittleness of external things, and then end up searching for ourselves so as to discover our true spiritual riches. How many of us experience, all of us, difficulties, challenges that will say, I need help to find who I truly am, to understand why I'm living this, and how to shift. So God bless the challenges in our lives. God bless the difficulties. God bless, because the pains and the difficulties will push us into what we are resisting to move towards. But this chapter is so vital for our change that he gives another practical, very practical tip. Choose a role model. Very insightful. And he says, we must become used to communion by thought and heart with the eminent spirits that have been of great influence. Amongst those great souls, it's good to choose one as our role model, the worthiest of our admiration. Of course, for many of us here, we already consider Jesus our role model. But to be in communion, to observe, you can't have a personal trainer that you don't see, that you're not dealing with, that you're not in contact with. We need to be in touch to actually receive the impact and to be imprinted. In our morning prayer, we started a new book, which is the book Mãos Marcadas, which is the stigmata. And we began this morning with Maria Dolores in her beautiful preface and poetry, saying the very words. As she's looking at Jesus as a model, she says, listen, celestial friend, I aspire to be with you, far away from my unsettling hours, where I've always been. And now where you are planting love in all the roads, so I can also have in my hands the marks, the stigmata, as you bring it in yours. Maria Dolores is only saying that because she's contemplating her role model. She's looking, she's observing, she's emulating. She wants to follow. But we look at Jesus and say, yeah, you're good, but I don't want to have the stigmata in my hands, which is the proof of our sacrifice, of our selflessness. Well, Leon Denis is going to say that there is no other way. So he says very practically, that in our daily habit, we need three elements. First, the ideal. Let us focus our thoughts often to the dreamed ideal. Then, let us meditate on it every day at a chosen hour, preferably in the morning. It's so interesting because he has a whole thesis about why in the morning, and many other traditions say the same. And he says, bear all things with patience and serenity. So, inevitably on earth, we're going to go through challenges and disruptions, and we need to be patient and serene as long as we keep our mind focused on that dreamed ideal. To finalize, he crowns this chapter by talking about what we want to achieve, happiness. And he says happiness is not found in external things, but within ourselves, in the inner life when we know how to lead it. And he explains that this happiness, the pathway is through selflessness. Above all, to learn how to forget ourselves, to sacrifice ourselves, to free ourselves from all feelings of selfishness. We are really happy in this world only to the extent that we know how to forget ourselves. Leon Denis crowns this chapter by leading us to the ultimate pathway. Selflessness does not mean not to know ourselves, but it means to prioritize the joy and the happiness of people in our lives. The day we know how to do it, the day we focus our minds on this, will be good. Think about the moment we go through a very difficult time. But if we stop doing the good because of difficult times, if we forget that there are people who may be under more difficult conditions, we're being selfish. Why? Because you and I know what many people on this planet don't know. So we have no excuse for a vacation, a break, some time off. We need to be on service, on call, on duty to be connected to higher minds and thus lead us into a better life. So we stop this brief study that we shared with you based on this book, The Problem of Life and Destiny. And we want now to bring everybody here with us so we can answer to some questions. Like when Gabriel Inácio asked about what is to externalize when Daisy was bringing Andrea Lewis, he talks about the externalization of the currents of thoughts. It's when we really think about them. Yes, that's what he means. He's just maximizing what it really means. And then Gabriel is saying, sometimes I wonder how I can keep living like this if the majority of people I live with, family, friends, colleagues, think so differently. Maybe I have to change the environment as well. Gabriel, beautiful question and beautiful comment. But we have to say this way. When we read these books, I'll give one book that I know, where is it? It was here, so many books. But Paul and Stephen is an example. That's why we need role models. Okay, Paul and Stephen shows to us what it is to think what we think at times when people don't think what we think. The pathway is inevitable. We're going to be weird and awkward and a bother to so many. But if we keep being true to ourselves, people will feel good because they look at us like, oh, they don't talk bad about people. Oh, they're always being kind. Oh, they're so hardworking. Oh, wow, they are so loving. And then people are like, what does make them be this way? And then join it in and in and in. It's very simple. But we need to truly be convicted about what we believe. Because if we're still stumbling, it's not going to imprint anything on anyone. Right? Right, friends? So I'd like to open if any of you, Luciana, Paloma, and Carol, also would like to add anything from these phenomenal thoughts. So surprising. Leon Denis is so current, and yet he talks about things in the past and so practical, right?
And that was going to be my comment, Vanessa, that the way he wrapped up by one, he started explaining, and Leon Denis always so reflective, meditating on his words. You know, we read him and you're like, oh my God, how does he come up with these expressions? But then he ends so practical, saying 3 things for us to do. And those 3 things, none of them are impossible. They are truly practical. Meditate, listen, pay attention every day, and even gives us a time, preferably in the morning. So I think we walk out of today's talk with action items for tomorrow morning, which is great.
Great. Thank you, Paloma. Anything else, friends?
Vanessa, when you brought Paul and Stephen as examples for us, we also thought of Livia, Publius Lentulus' wife, because she decided to be a Christian at a time when being a Christian was to be an outlaw, was to be a criminal, was to put one's physical life at stake. And yet she held herself so firmly. She had such conviction, as you said. She was so coherent in her beliefs that for 25 years she lived under the same roof as her husband, who was adamantly against Christianism, but she was so firm in her beliefs that she now, as a spirit, immortal spirit, is closer to the Christ in the spiritual realm. And Publilentulus Emmanuel is still striving to reach her level. And she didn't do anything externally extraordinary. She didn't, quote unquote, change the world as we sometimes expect. As Leon Denis said to us tonight, happiness is an inner job. And that's what Livia modeled to all of us. She conquered the serenity about which Leon Denis spoke and advised us to conquer as well. She conquered her ideal in her own inner kingdom, and thus she could live that truth and commune with the greater minds. And to date, she, we are certain, inspires all of us. She is one of the great minds that Leon Denis refers to. And Emmanuel, like we said, though he met with the Christ, because he was still looking for external changes and not internal changes, he's still striving to reach Livia's level.
You're right. You're right. You're right. Narcissus saying yes. And the John de Rosa is saying, each one of us are put with family, friends, and others to plant the seed of Jesus by being the example of how we think, talk, and act. And John de Rosa can say that because he walks the talk. He knows what he feels. And you're right, John. You're so right. If we just realize that, we are at ease. Oh, but it's so hard. No, it's not hard. You just sow. You don't keep like, oh, but it's not growing. It's not our problem. You just keep sowing. We don't expect anything. We just keep doing, right? All right. Luciana, you want to say something?
Yeah, I was reading, like, as Carol was talking, I was reading the last paragraph of the chapter that is saying that happiness is not found externally. So, how important it is. We always bring this out, and like with the books that we have, all these teachings that we are receiving, it really makes us happy. It makes it easy a little bit to go through life here knowing that we have help, we have all this material to give us hope, right? That we are in the planet. Things are difficult, but if we find this internal happiness, and luckily we can walk the talk like John de Rosa, going outside and spreading, it really makes us feel happy and align with this example that is our master model that we need to be following. So it's just very interesting. I was like, oh, okay, me and Carol has the same point to bring it about. So yes, happiness is not found external. So we just need to work it inside.
Wonderful. And Luciana, as you're saying that, I recall when during this pandemic, because many people couldn't, at the times when people like decreased the traveling, and I saw some video clips of people being at home and pretending to travel as if they were like running their treadmill with luggages, pretending like, oh, I'm traveling. But it's so interesting because when we think like happiness is external, there was a day I was home, as if I've not been at home, but let's say one day I was at home. And I was there, I was like vacuuming the kitchen floor, and I was thinking, wow, thinking things. And then I remember Mentor Joseph saying, Vanessa, what if you right now did an exercise? Think you would, right now, it's your last day. How would you feel? Oh my gosh, it would change everything. Said, well, so feel it and act on it. And I said, what do you mean? Is that going to happen? He said, no, but it's a good thing to practice. Because if you're going to feel differently and act differently, you better think that way all the time. And then I was like, oh my gosh, that changes everything. I'll be happy doing everything because I know it's not going to be every day vacuuming the kitchen forever. And then he said, yes, but then you'll be grateful you could do it. So think about it. It's going to be your last day today. And then see how it goes. And then since then, I started feeling like it makes a huge difference. It's what we call perspective. It's on us to choose our perspective. And that's the beauty of being human, because animals cannot do it. We can choose our perspective every day. The glass is half full or half empty. If we choose that it's half full, it's going to be happiness every day, as Luciana is saying, right? How happy are we that we're here together, that we can be together, and that we can be learning these things with Leon Denis and more, the great minds, as they are imprinting in us this joy of living. And we are going to gravitate to the passive session now, right? So our dear Paloma is going to lead us into this energy medicine moment, followed by the final prayer led by Luciana, friends. Let us join them.
Dear friends, let us now invite into our homes the doctors and nurses that have been prepared to come visit us and give us the necessary treatment that we all need. Let us breathe in and out, settle down, and visualize our beloved Master Jesus, our role model, our teacher, the doctor of our souls. Let us invite him closer to us. Let us embrace him, feeling this personal connection deepening. We are involved by Master Jesus' aura, and this aura brings healing to our perispirit. He sent specialized teams to care for us and our loved ones. And they are here at this very moment. Let us imagine a dome of golden light around our homes, and this golden light permeating every single room, the hallways, the kitchen, dining room. It revitalizes and harmonizes the energy in our homes. Let us now visualize ourselves and our loved ones being approached by the spirit doctors and nurses. They are here to apply the healing passes. All we have to do, dear friends, is resign to this moment and allow the treatment to happen. And we now want to think and visualize of anyone that we know of connected to us that is in need of treatment. Let us also imagine that these doctors and nurses pay them a visit and apply their healing hands over their body, harmonizing their energies, displacing old and unnecessary ones, creating space for renewal, and feeling this treatment that is still going. Let us now, dear friends, pray together.
Let us continue feeling the vibrations of the loving care of our mentors, and take this opportunity to say thank you to God and the mentors of the Spirit Society of Virginia and Kardec Radio for bringing us together this night to nourish our souls and to educate and help us to know much more about ourselves than we knew before. Thank you, mentors, for bringing this teaching to us. And we are so grateful for having this community, to being able to connect with you and your team of messengers, of mentors that can help and guide us throughout the days. And today, especially, as we come together and receive so much, we want to pray to those that is still not able to access these teachings, but one day they will. And please, God, help us to be your instruments as we are able to acquire these teachings. Please help us to be the living example of all that we learn, so that slowly we can transform ourselves and transform our community and later on the whole planet Earth. Thank you for giving us this opportunity of being together and learn. And we ask, dear Father, for everyone that works 24/7 to help in this pandemic, help to heal everyone that is sick in the physical realm. We are very thankful for having the doctors and nurses of the beyond to help them as well. We pray for every family, especially those families that has this new generation in their homes. Children that are missionaries, and with the guide of the mentors, with the guide of the teachings that we receive, we can help them to fulfill their mission while incarnated in this life. We pray, dear Father, for everyone in greater need than us. You know us very privately, and you know what we need. health, energy, courage. Please send to us all that we need so that we can fulfill our mission in this reincarnation. There's so much to say thank you and so much to ask. But we trust in you and we trust our lives that everything that is necessary for our growth in this reincarnation we'll be able to receive. And with gratitude in our heart, we'd like to ask permission to our Creator, our mentors, and this whole team that came together in order for this meeting to be able to materialize in the physical realm. So, with your permission, we would like to close the meeting of tonight. And so be it.
We want to thank everybody who helped bring this session to fruition in two realms. And our friends here who are connected to us, Narciso, Daniel, Slavic, Eliane, Gabriel Inácio, John Da Rosa, John Marques, Serena, Teresa Castro, Sol Souza, Nora. Thank you, friends, for your partnership in the good. If you have any question, feel free to write to us at cardiacradio@gmail.com. And we look forward to seeing you next week when we're going to learn much more together with Leon Denis in the book, The Problem of Life and Destiny. We wish you a lovely night or day, depending on where you are and what you're doing, and many beautiful thoughts, because thoughts are things. Thank you, friends.